Alright, so let's do the DM12, Dye DM12 Supergun show. Already done the unboxing video, so let's go ahead and jump right into the efficiency test and come back and do a quick maintenance video and do the conclusion. Alright, we're about to do the efficiency test on the DM12, and I'll show you guys something here. We've got the new Tech D, I believe it's called the Optimus digital gauge, so something we're going to be using from now on so you guys get a better look. Now you're going to see the number going down. The pressure is going to be going down. That's typical of a tank that is cooling. So we're sitting right now at 4,347 psi. So we're going to get really exact here now. And then also we'll take a tank temperature reading just like we always do. And we are sitting at about 86 degrees. 86 degrees. So let's see. Did you get that? Or here we go. Okay, so we're about 86 degrees on the tank. Okay, now the only thing we have here that's a little bit different is we did a custom products ASA extender here, and this is so we could get the gauge to screw into the guns. But I mean, we're talking about a very small amount of volume. This isn't a regulator or anything. It's just a pass-through that extends the tank back a little bit. So now we'll go ahead and we'll load up our first pod. And we'll turn this on. 295, 295, 306. So we'll dial this down just a little bit. Okay, so it looks a little bit better. So it looks like we're sitting right at about 290, we were 290 to 298 is about where we were at. So we'll go ahead and start shooting till we run out of air. Take a look here. So now that we got the gauge here, you can actually see that we shot that down to 75 psi. So that's kind of cool. I'm really liking that new Tech T gauge. And let's go ahead and count our pods. So we ended up getting about 8.5 pods. Thank you. All right, and let's go ahead and get the weight. So 2 pounds, 4 ounces. 2 pounds, 4 ounces for the DM12. Okay, so one of the first things we'll do is let's go ahead and take apart the bolt. And as you can see, it's got this neat little magnetic cap here that you can pull back. And it's almost like a toolless assembly. Now, obviously, if you torque it down with a tool, you're going to need a tool to remove it. But it's nothing really too crazy here. I did notice that when I took this gun out of the box when it was brand new, I noticed that the inside here of this can was completely coated with lube. So obviously, you know, when you get your gun in the mail, you're going to want to take a look at it and you know, inspect it and make sure there's not too much lube. About the only real big secret with dyes is use a thin amount of lube and lube it often. So you know, if you cake a ton of lube on these things, you know, on the inside and on the bolt and stuff like that, 90% of that is just going to end up going down your barrel and sticking to the inside of your barrel, causing your shots to be all over the place. So the best way to do it is you want to put an extremely thin amount of lube on there, and you just want to lube it often. So, you know, every time you come back to play, clean it up and put a very thin amount of lube back on your bolt and back on the O-rings, and put it back together again. So, you know, the thinnest amount of lube possible. And I've said this before with dye guns, 99% of any issues that you're gonna have with the dye guns is gonna come from the middle bolt seal O-ring right there. Any sort of leaking through the solenoid, through any sort of internal leaks, almost always is gonna be from that middle bolt seal O-ring. So when in doubt with a dye gun, always replace the bolt seal O-ring. That's, you know, I've just always learned that just seems to really fix everything. Solenoid leaks, air leaks down the barrel, that's a really good place to start. So in regards to lube, you can use the stock dye lube that comes inside of the packaging. That works really well. One of my favorites for here in Florida, I tend to like Slick Honey. That works really well. But I did notice one thing about the new bolt design as opposed to some of the other bolt designs in the past, is I did notice that, you know, I saw a video a long time ago where somebody said, you know, how do you know if you have enough lube on there? You can do this little flick test where you can flick the bolt with your hand and the bolt should snap forward. I do notice that it doesn't do that anymore with this new can design. So I'm not sure if it's just tighter tolerances or what, but when you screw this can in, put a little loop here on the rear O-rings. You'll notice that this, you know, this doesn't seem to want to really flick out as easy as it used to in the past. Now I've got about, I think I've got about probably 20 cases through this DM, and it's doing it a lot more than it used to. Before, when I first got it, when it was brand new, it wouldn't even budge. So, or maybe it's just wearing in a little bit more. So we'll go ahead and finish lubing this up. Now I know also a lot of people said, you know, with the new see-through parts here on the gun, is it, you know, are you going to get a lot more dirt inside the gun? I did notice that, you know, I did get a little bit of dirt in there. It's not really that. Didn't notice it that much. I did notice it seemed to affect this more than the inside of the gun. But if you really take a dive, a really hard dive, it's not a bad idea to take a swab and put it through the inside of here just to try to get out any sort of dirt that may come through these cuts. There we go. And that's about it for the bolt. So, you know, if you tighten it down with an Allen key, then you're going to need an Allen key to remove it. But once the air pressure's on here, that's not going to move. So let's go ahead. I'm going to show you now how to remove the grips. The grips are pretty simple. What you do is you always start with the back part right here, and you lift this out with your finger. Okay, so you lift that out with your finger, then take your fingernails and then pull out the front. There you go. And then once you do that, you can grab it, and then you want to pull it out and towards the ASA in kind of a curving manner. So there we go. Let's do the same thing on the other side. So the first thing you always want to do is pull this part out. So let's go ahead and pull that part out. And then once you pull that part out, take your fingernails and pull back just above the trigger. And once it unhooks there, then you want to go down and towards the ASA, lifting it up, and the grip comes right off. And I'm really happy that Dye went to this style of grip. One of my favorite things about the NT was the ergonomics. And now that they have incorporated those same ergonomics into the NT, or I'm sorry, into the DM12, it's definitely a Matrix owner's dream here. So something else that they did, they finally fixed the alignment with the trigger spring. They finally fixed the alignment. If you look at some of the dies like DM8, DM9, DM10, the spring would always get bent as you would pull the trigger back, and you could feel the tinginess of the spring getting bent in a weird off-cant direction. But now they've actually aligned it perfectly. The only thing they did wrong was they put way too stiff of a spring in there. Now I've got, you know, my magnet trigger kits. I got to create a store. I got sick of eBay. That's why I stopped selling them. But I've used my own magnet trigger kit to put in here. But I'm sure if you looked around, you could find a light spring, maybe a pin spring, something, or you may have to trim it down a little bit. But at least they aligned it so you don't get that friction feeling that you had with like the DM7, the DM8, and the DM9 when the socket was out of alignment. So that was kind of cool. It's got the, you know, the reach trigger here. So now what we're going to do is I'm going to go ahead and pause the video for a second. I'm going to go ahead and remove the screws here and disconnect the eyes and the solenoid from the board so that I can slide the grip frame away. And then I'm going to show you how to take apart the LPR and the high pressure regulator. Okay, so now after we unplugged the solenoid and the eye wire, went ahead and removed the front and rear grip frame screws. The grip frame slides away. And as always, got to be very careful about these Molex connectors. Very easy to rip these, so you always want to grab them by the sides instead of by the wires. So let's go ahead and take the screws and set them to the side. And now to remove the regulator, what I like to do is, first thing you want to do is go ahead and unscrew the fitting, the macro line fitting, and then once you do that, you should be able to slide down the rubber grip here. There we go. Okay, so now that we've got the regulator exposed, now sometimes you should be, depending on how it was put together, sometimes the whole reg will come apart, like you see here. This actually works out to be a little bit better because you know, usually you want to make sure that this is torqued in place. This works out better when your regulator comes apart like this when you go to unscrew it off the gun. Take your Allen key and torque this into place into the gun, and then that way when you go to remove the regulator, you can just remove this middle piece. Makes it a little bit easier. That way when you go to tighten it, when you go to take it apart again, you don't have to go both ways with the Allen key. So this typically works out a little bit better when it's like this. So now that we got this apart, let's go ahead and see if we can get this regulator apart. Okay, now to get the regulator apart, you're gonna have to grip it by the middle here. Take a big Allen key, put it in through the bottom. You'll be able to take it apart. Sometimes you'll need to have to use a like a jar opener or something like that to get some extra grip. There we go. Almost, there we go. We got the piston out. It's got quite a bit of lube on there, so let's go ahead and start cleaning that up. All right, so we got the piston cleaned up. We'll go ahead and stick a clean swab inside of the regulator housing. It's quite a bit of the lube was inside here, so we'll just go ahead and clean this up while we got it apart. And use whatever your favorite lube is. It's not, something is better than nothing. So I love the questions we get on the internet. Like, if there was I had no lube, could I use Vaseline? Could I use, you know, Astroglide? Could I use baby oil? It's like, God, I mean, you go to like macrolineguy.com, or, you know, there's so many places you can get paintball lube for like $2 or $3. It just makes no sense why you wouldn't just buy paintball lube. Like, you play paintball, right? Yeah, well, go buy some normal paintball lube. Why, you know, why are you trying to improvise? So, but use whatever works for you. Something's better than nothing. So we're going to go ahead and put the regulator back together. There we go. There we go. And we'll put the bottom cap on here. And now we're just going to clean this top piece here. There we go. We got it all put together, so we'll just go ahead and slide the sleeve in. Actually, you know what? I'm going to do this a different way. Now you got to be really careful with these reg sleeves here. These do tear pretty easily, so there we go. Give us just a little snug. There we go. And our regulator has now been maintained. So, and that's going to be good for probably at least 5+ cases. And now let's go ahead and remove the low pressure regulator. Okay, low pressure regulator is pretty simple. This rear set screw here, just go ahead and remove this. It's the only one that you need to touch. You don't want to mess with the middle one. That's an air transfer hole. This front one here is for your grip frame screw. The only one you need to mess with is the one at the very, very back. I know quite a few people, including myself, you know, made that mistake before of unscrewing the middle set screw, and then all of a sudden you hear an air leak back there because you didn't Loctite it back into place. So now the only thing is to get this out, you're going to need to get yourself a small, like a precision pair of needle nose pliers in order to be able to grab the sides of the LPR housing to slide it out. So I have this pair of bent tip needle nose pliers. Have been awesome for me. I've had them for years. Got them from Sears. I think they were like $9–10 bucks, and they just work great for pulling things out like pistons and stuff like that. So I'm gonna go ahead and clean up this LPR housing. I'll tell you something else. These little Kingman 50 cal spider swabs are amazing because they get into these little areas like this inside of regulators and stuff like that. And I keep one specifically for cleaning up guns and stuff like that. So you can see the gets inside there, cleans up all the factory lube, any sort of dirt or anything that gets inside there. That's something else too. Inside this LPR housing, there's always one of those Bellevue washers, one of those conical washers that stays in there. So you don't have to really take the washers apart. I know sometimes if you go to maintain a really old gun, these washers will get rusted. You know, then it's okay, you can take them apart, but then you got to sit there and count your washers and see, you know, do you have the right amount in there? Are they facing the right way? So I try to keep them in place. On a brand new gun like this one, you really don't have to mess that much with the shim stack. Just try to keep it in its place. When you pull it out of the gun, you also want to take your time when you pull it out of the gun. This hasn't changed much with the DMs over the past few years. It still comes out the same exact way and stuff like that. But one thing you do want to notice is on your LPR, you will notice a groove or a notch cut into the housing here. That is where the set screw holds this whole assembly in place. All right, so let's go ahead and slide in the LPR housing. Now, it's not a bad idea to, there we go. So you just want to make sure that the notch is aligned. You can also check it from the back to make sure that your LPR notch is aligned. So when you look inside there, you'll see the notch, make sure it's facing up. And just snug that down. You'll notice you do get quite a bit of dirt around this little rear cap here, so you want to keep this dry. You don't have to lube any part of this rear cap. It's more of just a cosmetic thing, or maybe a safety thing, so the LPR, maybe if the set screw comes loose, it'll hold it all into place, but there we go. That's it. So now all I'm going to do here is, let's go ahead, I'm going to put on the fitting here, put the grip frame back in place, and we'll finish up with the conclusion. All right, so let's go ahead and wrap up the DM12. It shoots just as good as any of the other Matrix guns. So, you know, consistent performer. Dye. This is Dye's flagship marker, and you know they're not going to make any sort of real crazy radical changes with this. A little bit here, a little bit there as you go from year to year, but it's a proven bolt design. The ergonomics are great. I love the contact pads around the front here. Basically, you have the NT ergonomics in the Matrix, you know, fuse bolt system, which is great. So shoots good, it's quiet, it's accurate out there on the field, and I mean there's not a lot to complain with it. It's still the consistent performance that you'd expect it to be, and you know, I'm definitely glad that Dye finally, you know, they're making some changes in the trigger, which is probably where, if I was going to say there's one thing they really need to improve on, is the trigger. Now the trigger is nice, but it's not as nice as some of the other guns that are out there on there. You know, in my opinion, I like the Bob Long trigger. Planet Eclipse trigger is a little better. Also, I don't like feeling side to side, you know, rub on the inside of the trigger well. I would love to see Dye go towards an extended inner bearing, the ball bearings with the extended inner raceways to kind of get the trigger away from scratching on both sides of the frame. It's not that big of a deal with it, but when you're paying, you know, $1,200–1,300 for a marker, I would like to see, you know, a little more thought go into the bearings and the trigger on this gun. So I think that's probably one place where I think it's still lacking a little bit. I do like that you can adjust it forward and backwards. You know, you've got the new reach trigger, so you know, if you like the extreme Sith design, especially if you're using a smaller tank and you want your trigger to be almost at a 45-degree angle, you can do that with this. But you know, the side-to-side play with it is, you know, it leaves a little bit to be desired, and I would love to see maybe a little more thought go into the trigger, or something that maybe it locks down into like a bushing or something like that, so there's very little side-to-side play and, you know, extended inner bearing. So I mean, if the Axe has got it now, there's no excuse why you couldn't put that into a $1,300 marker. So that's about probably my criticism with it. I don't notice it that much when you're shooting it, but you do feel it a little bit, and with a gun that's this expensive, you've got every right to be particular about it, and I'm going to be. So other than that, you know, gunshot great, no chops, no barrel breaks with it, and extremely accurate, quiet, feels good in the hands. You know, I love the you know, the wraparound grips that are on here, you know, that are from the NT. Makes it really easy if you're going up to dive into a bunker, having that grip on the back. You know, you can, you know, torque your gun up, you know, so you don't end up you know, taking a core sample when you dive in. But I love the way it looks, I love the way it shoots and it feels. A little bit of a, you know, now that the guns are starting to get a little smaller, still has a little bit of size to it, which definitely helps in regards to, you know, barrel rise when you're shooting. But you know, you compare this to some of the other guns that are out there that, you know, the guns are starting to get smaller and smaller. It's still, you know, starting to feel almost like a bigger gun. So, you know, maybe they'll go to the design that they had on the PMA, where they put the LPR in the front, which shrank the back down a little bit. You know, maybe Dye will go that route, who knows. But other than that, it's it was a great shooting gun, very consistent. So, you know, you guys that are big time Matrix owners, you know, that have been, you know, following the Matrix lines all the way through the DM, you know, 4, 5, 6, 7, all the way up to the 12, this isn't going to disappoint. It definitely feels really good in the hands, shoots just like shoots just like any Matrix is expected to shoot, and it performed great out there on the field. So thank you very much. Thanks for tuning in.